So the right way to do it is to start with your sales goal and work backwards based on your machine, right? Like that's why you measure these things. Work backwards based on the variables that you know in your business. And then it will tell you at the end of that, math equation, how much is a reasonable target to spend for this year in order to achieve these goals.
Welcome to the Contractor's Edge, the show where we break down the strategies, tactics, and tools that you need to grow your home service business. Whether you're in roofing, HVAC, remodeling, pest control, or foundation repair, the truth is the same. The goal is predictable, profitable growth. So now that we've got Anthony back, welcome back. He was on the road in our last show, and we were able to have Ed Meyer on and talk about crazy topic of the sales manager versus the sales coach, which I know now you've had a chance to listen to, Anthony.
Yeah, so I loved that episode. I've always had really fond and like impressed experience whenever I talked to Ed Meyer. So getting him on camera and in front of the audience, I knew was going to be a really good experience all around. You guys still knocked it out of the park, if you ask me. And then overall, I think it was a great week for like contractor focused podcasts, because I also saw, and it ties into what you guys were talking about with Ed, because he's going to be at that Voices of the Industry training like conference that's 11th, 12th, 13th.
That's correct.
In November, because Scott Llewellyn of FRS was actually on the Beers with Contractors with Will Blake, and they did a phenomenal job too. So if you haven't got a chance to watch either of those episodes, please check out our last episode with Mike and Ed. You will find so much value in it, and give a listen to the latest episode of Beers with Contractors that had Scott Llewellyn from FRS on there, because they really dig into what I think should be the standard when it comes to partners for contractors. Like, your supplier is an extension of your team. What are they doing to support you and help your team grow and improve, essentially? So,
yeah, it was incredible. And, just to hear those two guys that have worked together, known each other in the industry, share their experiences, Voices of the Industry is going to be amazing. If you are in, the foundation repair industry or interested in getting in that, I would highly recommend going over to Foundation Rescue Supply, over to their website and register in the events section. There might be still some time. You can always just ask if they'd let you attend. It's a free event. You just have to get yourself there, but it is packed full of information. So
yeah, but good to be back, Mike. Good to be back.
Yep. No, it's great to have you back. I'll apologize to our listeners in advance. I'm going to try not to cough. I've taken all these medicines, but the plague hit me. And so kind of worked through that over the weekend. And so we'll see how it goes in the show today. But before we dive in, to our edge of the week, I want to talk about how we're going to close out 2025 clean. We're going to plan for 2026 with intention and not emotion. That's the core focus for this week's episode. I really hope our listeners take an opportunity to, listen. I know it's kind of difficult when we're talking about, a podcast or watching on YouTube, but we do have an article that I wrote. It's one that, we utilize with our clients on an annual basis that gives us the steps into a recap, a little bit of forecasting, because we're typically doing it before we get too deep into, the fourth quarter, and then planning out that next year. So, with that in mind, Anthony, kick us off with the edge of the week.
All right. Excited. So the edge of the week, this week I chose a focus on your lead management. So the running inside joke now is that when I do the edge of the week, it has to be something that is either super low cost or free and is going to bring back value to the business. So without increasing your investment, you're increasing your bottom line revenue, and you're walking out even healthier of a machine when it comes down to those numbers that we're going to dive into in the main section of the episode today. So it's actually funny because I had this conversation this morning. I can't tell you how many times I consult with an owner, a marketing director, a CSR lead, and find ways that their systems can be tuned to better handle the leads in order to generate and more appointments from the opportunities that are already coming into the business. So in 2025, a lot of support systems and programs for lead management have leveled up their game with the implementation of AI. And there are ways that that AI implementation is making those systems run more efficiently, have a better experience for the end customer, but also for your internal team to the business. Ask yourself, why would a customer prefer to leave a voicemail during after hours versus having a conversation with an educational AI tool that can help them answer some of their surface level questions, and communicate what they are trying to have fixed or assessed in their home. Um, and then ask yourself, why would your business prefer a voicemail to that as well? So take a look at the options in the market. There's plenty of them, especially here in 2025, and implement what you feel will help boost your lead retention, book more appointments, and even save some administrative time for your call center or CSRs. If like speed to lead is an issue that you're dealing with your team, this like augmented support through AI can help you get a better speed to lead. If you are just using a voicemail after hours, this AI tool can be your improved voicemail that gets you a more primed opportunity the next morning when your team comes in to follow up on those opportunities. A couple of names I can throw out there that I've interacted with this year are Avoca. So they appear to be the leader in the field. It's very sophisticated, in some ways impressive. They have a lot of data they've been building up over the years because they have been part of that call handling, call management, marketplace for a while now. They've just now kind of leveled up on the AI side, right? Another option is Structurally, which is another one that's very sophisticated, and learns a lot about your business, your industry, your services, so that it can answer very complicated questions and feel like insanely useful, right? But it's a little more budget friendly. And then the third option is CallRails AI Assist. This one is a little less sophisticated. It doesn't have as much of the knowledge base that the other two AI tools will have, but you'd be surprised. It's an entry level option, I would say. So a lot less expensive, but still having very good conversations and getting those details for you where it's going to be a vast improvement to just leaving a voicemail.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we discussed it. Very familiar with Avoca. Does certainly appear to kind of be leading the charge there and helping these businesses. And the whole point of this, and I love this being your edge of the week. When you're getting to these capacity issues, or when you know that there's benefits to being potentially 24-hour service, if someone wanted
Hmm.
to call and talk to you, you can't answer all those phone calls, but these guys can. The AI assistants are improving on a daily basis. I know when you and I were testing out the beta, with CallRail, it was like, "Ugh, well, it can improve," and they've improved substantially. So I think that there's ample opportunity when you're paying money to make that phone ring, and
Hmm.
you're paying for your branding and your appearances, and these people just happen to call outside of your tight window, of hours.
Hmm.
This is money. I mean, don't leave money on the table. If you've got an opportunity, this AI assistant can answer some general questions, help the homeowner feel a bit more at ease, give them a little bit of information about the services, and from there, get the information, set the expectation that there's going to be this callback, and you're in business. But yeah, I mean, with the crazy ones like, Avoca and even Structurally, those can do a lot of the scheduling for you. So it just depends on what your CRM is. But it's incredible when you think about how far this has gone, how much it can add to your bottom line that you may already be missing out on.
Yep. One more thing I wanted to add is it can also qualify some of those leads for you too. So imagine what your CSRs are doing that Monday morning after a weekend, and there's a good amount of form submissions or calls that had come through and left voicemails. Like instead of just having the person's name and phone number, which is what you're going to get on a voicemail, and most of the time, really all you're going to get on a form, unless they leave something in the comments, you can get the answer to the question, are they the homeowner, for example. That's one of the big ones all the time, is like, is this a renter or is this an owner? And you'll have all those details already flushed out. So
Oh, that's great. I appreciate that. It's a heck of a edge of the week for our listeners. So, we're going to dive into the meat of the show. And, before we do, I just want to share, again, it's very important that you're able to look at essentially, this SOP and
Mhm.
understand, in writing, and use that, and then use the tools that we provide you to be able to use for free. But in this blog that we've written for this recap with a little bit of forecast, and then for the 2026 planning, Anthony and I are going to kind of go through some bits and pieces. We'll talk about some parts that we believe are really important, and should be a focus. So when we're looking at building a real plan for 2026, the thing I always tell the business owners is, please understand that your business is built to turn leads into dollars. So
Mhm.
you have to think about that. It's fine if you're generating the opportunities in-house, or you're working with a partner, but the responsibility is immediately thrown upon you the second that phone rings, or a form fill
Mhm.
comes in. So before you actually go into planning and thing for next year, you have to understand how your machine is performing. And
Mhm.
that's the point where we build out this KPI calculator. But even beyond that, I know I sound like a broken record. We laugh about it, at the agency, but you have to understand, what's it look like for your leads, the appointments set, your appointments run, the sales closed, and even like the revenue generated. These are the bare bones basic of what you need to pay attention to in your business. There's really two things before you can dive further down the rabbit hole, if you will, and that's your true cost per lead, and that's across all your sources, and then the average revenue per job, or by service type, because for some of the clients, we know that we break it out. Concrete lifting and leveling is a much smaller ticket than going and doing a
Mhm.
complete, basement wall rebuild, or putting in a whole series of piles. So that's just a different way that we like to kind of paint that, so that you understand. And then once you know those, the rest of the plan is really just math. And I'm very, Anthony, I'll tell you, very pragmatic when it comes to that. We look at these situations, we look at these numbers. There's certain areas of responsibility within, our agency or your organization. And so we really try to make it as clear as possible what our intentions are, what we need to measure to make educated decisions.
Yeah. The thing that's important to me is making sure that you're able to stop guessing
Mm.
in order to chase the growth that you're after, right? It's funny because the business owners always have an easy target in their head for revenue, right? And they try to treat a marketing strategy the same way, where they throw out a round number for the next year's goal, and they hope marketing can get them there, right? Like, so they say, hey, I'm going to spend $100,000 on my marketing next year. And I'm going to hope that gets me to my, $10 million revenue goal or something astronomical a lot of the time. And like, what I hope we can help the audience understand is that is backwards. Firstly, just on the strategizing side of it, it's backwards because you're not going to give enough resources to your overall efforts, and that's going to leave you with like an anemic or like a very hollow overall strategy, versus what you actually needed to hit your goal. So the right way to do it is to start with your sales goal and work backwards based on your machine, right? Like, that's why you measure these things. Work backwards based on the variables that you know in your business, and then it will tell you at the end of that math equation how much is a reasonable target to spend for this year in order to achieve the. So what is your, and these are going to sound very familiar, I do want to point that out. We have talked about this on the podcast before. We're not trying to sound like a broken record here, but these are things that we are very passionate about, and we know matter. They're fundamental to your business, right? If you want to know why we say that you should measure these things, or how you should measure these things, please go back to the previous episodes that we've done on your sales KPIs, on your marketing KPIs, on your call center KPIs. That'll give you the what and how, or I mean the where and how. This is the what, right? So what is your close rate? What is your appointment run rate? So, of the appointments that you set on the calendar, how often do you run those appointments? What is your appointment set rate of the leads that come in through your phones or through your website? How often do they turn into appointments? And then what does your cost per lead look like today? And one thing that people don't do, Mike mentioned it quickly, is your cost per lead is all sources,
Also,
all marketing efforts divided by your total leads, right? Um, and you guys can use the tools that we've made along the ride here for the podcast and the agency, we do have a KPI calculator that's going to help you understand those targets. Please do use it. We'll talk more about it at the end of the podcast. It tells you exactly how many leads and how much spend you'll need to hit your target based on your own performance. If you can plug in those, what is that? 4? Yeah, just 4 numbers there. It will do that like reverse breakdown to tell you this is how much you're recommended to be spending in order to hit this goal.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And it's funny because this next portion that we run into, this is actually the question that everyone asks. And it's so difficult to give you an answer without understanding first your KPIs and then second what the actual goals are, because then we've got to determine what level do you need to be at. So this is actually setting a marketing percentage. So, every trade has that same fundamental rule for healthy growth. And we look at 7% as like really maintaining, 10% is for growth, and then 13% or higher, we say domination, but sometimes it's essential. We have some clients that are down in the 4% and they're still seeing growth. And it's really due to like their branding, mixed marketing strategy, leaning into, everything that we've put together over the years, and they're seeing how it compounds and they continue to grow. And then we have others that, they're in duking it out with private equity and they're holding their own and they're a fraction of the size. But again, even being that and keeping their team fed, they're around 13%. So, we've heard crazy stories here recently about $900 average cost per lead in a foundation repair area, which breaks my heart because that's really hard for a company to be right side up when you're paying that much for an opportunity. So I just want to share, like, these are guardrails, and you're setting this because this is what all of your KPIs and benchmarks become. So if you're looking to grow, then the marketing and advertising budget actually has to match what that intent is. And then you can't expect that, 10% growth on a 5% budget. We have that conversation. There are some times where maybe you just want to be in a maintenance mode, and we help to put together something that's, I'm not going to say conservative, but designed for that. And then other times it's, hey, let's get in here. We want to just punch people in the face, and we put something together a bit more aggressive. So it's wild, but you've got to stick to that marketing percentage that you set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then forecast forecast reality and not fantasy, right? It's really easy to come up with these broad schemes. I've had a client sit in the offices at the agency, take over control of our whiteboard and show me the roadmap to $5 billion in sales. This was a $2 million company. It was very fantasy and not what he should have even been focusing on in this moment. His goal was 3 million, not 5 billion, right? Look at realistic scenarios that you can target, and so that you can achieve them. And then if you excel past that, then revel in that achievement. Don't set these ridiculous targets. Try not to look at like a 5-year roadmap in this moment when you're strategizing for 2026, right? That's a broader, more macro conversation that you don't necessarily need to bring into your 2026 planning. So build 3 scenarios that you can plan around for 2026. Build a conservative, still growth target that's 10% growth. That is healthy growth for a company. Like if you follow the stock market or like big publicly traded companies, growth of 10% in a year is great. It is very healthy. It's often the reasonable target that most businesses set from year to year. Another target to set is 20% growth. This is heftier. It's still very doable, especially in the contractor space. If you're still jostling out there for market share, you can grow 20% or more year over year. It comes in your execution, right? And then do a third one that is 30% growth. Try not to, and I know that there's going to be stories that you hear from your competitors or from your peers in the space where they grew 50% year over year. We have a handful of clients, probably more than a handful, just last year grew more than 50% year over year. But if you're setting that as your target, you're more frequently not going to hit it. You set the target at 30% and you hit 50, everyone gets something to celebrate about. You end up with that 4% marketing budget at the end of the year, like Mike was saying, where you were probably targeting 10, and you were overperforming and you end up at like a 4 because like everything aligned and things came out really, really well. So those 3 scenarios are what you should plan for 2026: 10%, 20%, 30%. This is not about wishful thinking. It's about control, right? So each one assumes small, believable gains in how your team performs. Slightly faster lead follow-up, a better call center set rate, a stronger close rate in the home, consistent average ticket growth. These are all variables that you have an input on in your business, that your team can make marginal improvements on, that is going to make your machine run more efficiently, and thus your marketing dollars take you further and your goals become easier to achieve. Remember, when you scale, efficiency does shift. So your machine is going to change. Your average close percentage might actually go down if you are now more competitive. If you become that $10 million company versus when you were that $5 million company, your numbers are going to be different. Just look at how that does shift and keep controlling those levers that you have control over. Does my average ticket need to go up? Does my appointment set rate need to improve? Is there a pitfall when it comes to close percentage, or is that just the nature of the industry at this level, right? Look out for those indicators essentially, and then pull the levers in your machine that fit to fill that gap essentially. Your cost per lead will likely rise a little as you push harder, right? I like to call this fuel efficiency for a good example. If you want a faster running car, if you want it to burn up the streets and, leave rubber marks, all that fun stuff, it is going to burn fuel. Okay, so that is a good analogy for if you are running a more boisterous system where you're trying to win 20% market share. It's going to be a little less cost efficient, but overall, you're going to be a bigger company. You're going to be a larger operation. There's going to be economies of scale that help your profitability outside of the lead cost, right? So focus on those things.
Yeah, and it's such a great analogy. I know we talk about it all the time, within the agency, and for our listeners, it's the easiest thing to understand because I'm sure every one of you, drive a vehicle, you're familiar with the way that things roll. If you're looking at your gauges on your vehicle, it's really, your speedometer is your revenue. So you have a specific goal that you want to get to. Essentially, the RPMs are that lead volume and activity. So, how high are you ramping this? And then, your miles per gallon, it's your efficiency, right? Your marketing efficiency. And so the way that we always describe it is like, all right, when we're ready to mash down and we're pushing hard, those RPMs are going to go up and you're not going to be as efficient. And you'll see when you start playing with like the KPI calculator, there's different things that you can, modify there, and you can see the impact that you can have that actually improves your efficiency. So, if you're pushing harder and your lead costs are going up, which is typically, how things go, then there's other areas where you can actually start pulling and pushing that can actually improve that performance across. So, when we're talking about it, essentially the goal isn't necessarily perfect balance, but it's staying healthy with the performance, understanding what your goals are, and then making every marketing dollar deliver a predictable revenue. So,
right.
Everything's not 100% systematic. We try, we can get close. I would say over the years, we've done crazy improvements in our predictive modeling. Obviously, it helps as our sample size of our clients are able to, grow. And then just talking with other industry affiliates, learning a little bit more about ways that we can help our clients to improve their efficiency as well. But at the end of the day, don't be afraid, to go into the higher RPMs. As long as everything else is like essentially running efficiency. Are you answering your phone calls? Are you scheduling these appointments? Are you able to get out to the people fast enough? That's always the big conversation I know that we have, Anthony, is, if all the leads are coming in, that's exciting. But if you don't have anyone to run it, or you're scheduled out too far and you can't start to drop off, now what's the point of going so crazy fast? So
Right.
it's just putting things into like a realistic goal.
Yep. And like growth isn't just in marketing. I think we talked about it in like the earlier episodes of the podcast, that a lot of the times that we're able to help through our guidance or consulting or the execution of marketing, like able to help people grow. the biggest lever often is finding a way that we can make their internal operations more efficient. I,
Yes.
I don't. I feel like there's probably the handful analogy earlier. There's probably only a handful of companies that we've worked with where we got in there and we're like, oh, you guys run a really efficient like lead processing like system. Like your team is on top of it. Your response rates are really, really good. Your call center is educated. They know your services, your service area. They're not turning away work. They're not miscommunicating what you guys offer or getting confused by some of the more esoteric language around these services because they're not contractors, right? One thing that happens all the time, I was talking with, because I was traveling, right? I was talking with that client
Mm-hmm.
and they get overqualification on the phones a lot. And they don't realize that the goal here is to book an appointment. If there is a chance that that customer needs you, your job isn't to flush out how they could possibly not need you on the phones, right? Clear those few questions. Are they the homeowner? Is this, a problem that's inside or outside? Like really kind of broad things, and then go out there and assess what their home needs. Because even if it is not well described by the homeowner, firstly, you're also not the expert to understand what is being described. You might get confused because the homeowner is confused and they don't understand the language, and your CSR isn't going to understand it as well as your inspector. So just don't create your own barriers there, but book that appointment, right? It's about operational discipline, right? So on the call handling side of things, your target for your answer rate, it needs to be like answering your phones during business hours. It has to be above 90%. So look for ways that you can augment if there's a capacity issue. If you've only got one or two people answering the phones and they're both on the phones at the same time, what does that look like as far as your answer rate? If it brings you below 90%, you need to augment that care essentially. So do you need an AI assistant just for the overflow calls? If both of my lines are busy, the AI picks up to make sure that that customer is getting an answered phone call. Because what you guys don't realize is in the back end, when you miss those phone calls, there's other signals that are being sent to those different digital tools. Your Google business listing, for example, this is during business hours. It knows that you missed that call. Your LSA will know that you missed that call. If somebody calls off our Google Ads extension, Google is going to know that you missed that call. And especially for local service ads placement, they're going to penalize you for not answering that call because they don't charge you for that lead and they want to charge you for that lead. So instead, the next time they're going to give that lead to somebody who's going to answer the phone, right? So just keep that in mind. Response time it needs to be under 5%. That's an average, right? On your forms or your missed calls. You need to get back to that person when they're active, when they were trying to get a hold of you. You don't know what's about to happen in their life. It could be their son's first birthday the next day or the next week, and they're planning for it, or like that was the moment where the urgency was live for them. Try to get there still in that window, right? And then strong confirmation and reminder systems to reduce cancellations. If you don't have an auto response for your form submissions that say, we received this and we're going to be in contact with you, like that's one thing where it might stop them from immediately reaching out to your competitor. It's like, oh, okay, they confirmed. They said they're going to be in touch with me. I don't need to keep looking for other options, right? It might send that signal and stop them from reaching out to your customer. The other end of it is before the appointment, make sure you're sending confirmations. I know it. Some of our clients, they like to send out this pre-appointment information. It might say who their contractor is. It might give them answers to some of the frequently asked questions, how they can prepare for their inspection, things like that. But it's a nice, good touch. It reminds people of the conversation that's happening and that you're an expert and that their issue is going to be taken care of. You're on the job. And it will reduce your amount of cancellations if you are currently not implementing it, right? On the sales process side of things, because there's a reason why we did separate episodes for each one of these like departments in your business, right? The sales process, consistency matters more than charisma. it's funny because your best salesperson in a lot of these operations is the person who does not use a script, who doesn't need, like, they're going to be in the room arguing that consistency is the enemy, right? Like, and they're probably your top salesperson. This is not necessarily for that person, right? It's the reason why the rest of the team cannot be consistent with that person's numbers. Whatever that unique that person has is, you need to try and implement it into a system to make it consistent, right? So, it, so you have a target for your closing ratio and you have a lever that you can actually push or pull. If you don't have consistency, if you don't have some type of script or at least like a checkbox, it's I'm saying all of these things, I'm communicating each of these messages, you're not going to be able to tune that up or down. So you're rolling the dice with every opportunity essentially going in there. And it might be coming out favorable for you, but it's going to be a obstacle in trying to scale your business. You're going to have to hire on more salespeople. You can't just duplicate that man, especially if you don't know what he's doing that is being so effective, right?
Well,
So
and that's your transparency. You know, I mean, it's the big one that we've always talked about. We've been talking about, you know, Zero and Rilla and Sales Ask now for, I don't know, almost a year now. And, you know, it was great to hear Ed, you know, in the last episode actually talking about the way that they implemented that. And then also he was able to like objectively, you know, fight against some of the pushback that the sales guys have given in some of these companies that implemented this, because they were just scrutinizing people based on the performance instead of using it to actually coach them to improve their performance. So yeah, I mean, it's incredible that, just exactly like you're saying, in order to make this systematic and something you can duplicate for every one of your sales reps, you have to have visibility, and you as a business owner, you deserve that. You're paying for that.
Yep. It's about tuning that system. It does not have to feel robotic. People hear script and they're like, oh, but it's not. No, it does not need to be that. You could make your script be that really open, conversational tone that your best salesperson is doing. You just have to like identify it and then work towards a system that emulates it, right? It does need to be systematic. It's going to be very, very hard to scale your business if you can't do that. The distance between 5 and 10 million is that 2 or 3 more really good salespeople or inspectors, right? What if you can't get ones that hit the same marks? Now, are we looking at 5 or 6 of them? Like, how messy does this get if you can't create a system, right? So use visuals, sales presentations, for example. FRS is going to be revealing theirs for that foundation repair industry. If you don't have a sales presentation that kind of elevates the overall experience that the customer is having, I just try to imagine this from a homeowner who does not understand what you're talking about. In the home service industry, you guys talk about some complex subjects. And because you're contractors or because you work in the contracting industry, these terms become second language to you or second nature to you. They sound like common sense. And the concept is getting missed by the homeowner. That is why drawings are important. That is why like visualizations are important. We call them visual aids in like the presentation kind of space. Like if I'm doing a PowerPoint, I want a visual aid to like help nail in what I'm trying to communicate to you guys. So you can see it visually. That's what you need in your sales process. If you're describing a product or a service, if you're describing a differentiator between your product or your service, get visuals that your team can use to help the homeowner understand. Make sure you have clear pricing, and good, better, best options are really helpful in increasing your closing percentage as well. And lastly, and very importantly, especially in the age of 2025, because I know there are older generations that are even more hesitant to this, please offer and present financing. Please don't do it like it's the bad apple, that like you're reluctant. And it's like, we're so sorry that we even have to present this to you. It is a benefit that you're offering that homeowner. If there are special terms and conditions that make the financing like somewhat scarier, it's like, oh, if you don't pay this off in this amount of time, there is interest that can be collected. Communicate that with the homeowner. Share with them that like the only reason you're presenting this is because it is going to make this more palatable, more affordable for the homeowner. And hey, there are a couple of like mines that the banks or the financiers kind of hope that you step in. I don't want you to step in those. I just want to do this project for you. So
Right.
make
Well,
sure
that's
you pay
like,
this off in this amount of time.
yeah, talking to our friends over at 360 Financing, that's like one of the examples, for a long time, there was foundation finance and, I know Hearth, I think is one of them. And
Hmm.
now you've got like Green Sky really dominates the market. And that always leaves space for new folks that'll come on that maybe have a bit more flexible program, and
Hmm.
so with 360 Finance, like one of the coolest things I like about them is immediately they train the contractor on utilizing this platform. Super easy. I mean, super cake. It's customized directly to the individual company. And then, normally you're looking at two different offers. One would be for someone that already has the money to pay for the job. But
Yep.
if you're able to offer them an interest free, hey, borrow my money to get your project done, man, you stake that job. That's a great closing utility. And then the second, again, another closing asset, which Ed talked about, just a budget friendly offering. So just
Hmm.
understanding what are the homeowner's responsibilities and how can you work up some sort of program for them that is a good monthly affordable payment structure so that then they can restore the structure, whatever issue they're having within their home. And that's like financing is the key. Not only is it affordability, it's just it can be practical, so practical.
Yeah, and it's frustrating to me as a marketeer to get contractors to understand the way that. And I always couch this analogy, and I'm not telling you need to be more like car salesmen, but I'm telling you need to be more like car salesmen.
Yes.
When they talk about their financing, they're talking about it excitedly.
Yes.
The often the way they try to close deals and is how I can get you a better rate or better payment, like what's comfortable to you uh, in the contractor space. It you guys a lot of the time put melancholy into that conversation. It's like you don't want them to take the financing option. It is a really
Yeah.
good option. You should be proud of having that option there, and you should present it as kind of this release valve. You don't have to pay $15,000 for this project right now. That is good news, not
It's
bad
great.
news.
Yep.
So, yeah. Another big thing to focus on that I know a lot of businesses aren't doing. I know Will Blake and Beers with Contractors is talking about it a lot. It's funny because kind of organically we started talking about it around the same times. So we've mentioned it on the podcast before too, and I know it's going to come up at that FRS training in November. It's rehash and database marketing. So when you have customers and you go out and first of all, you spent money to generate a lead. You spent money to send one of your employees out to that person's house and have a conversation with them. You deployed resources to generate an estimate, right? Like whatever your deck is, whatever that looks like for getting a sophisticated estimate and presenting that to a customer. If the customer does not move forward, you did not lose all of the value of that interaction unless you just toss that data out, right? You now have this person and data about their home. Like if you logged that information like well, you can repurpose that and use it towards your advantage for your general marketing, but you also can re-engage with these people. We call it rehash for a reason.
Yep.
Follow up with every unsold lead. 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days later. These are all individual cadences. Keep going after them because you don't know when whatever it was that was the obstacle might just be lifted, right? Maybe it was money was tight that month, right? Maybe it was money was tight that quarter, right? Like re-engage with these people. And then also the database. So like you have this bucket of customers who are unsold jobs. It becomes pretty measurable if you're able to create a system around
Oh,
if
sure.
I reach back out to these people, how often do I get a response from them? How often do I get back in the home? And I think you'll be shocked how often those turn into sales if you're able to rebook that appointment. It's like, hey, we're reaching back out. We wanted to see if you still needed this work done. I know the home was, in disrepair and we want to put it back together for you. Was there an issue with the inspector that we sent out there? We've got, John, he's our best guy. We want to make sure that you get the best service. So we're going to send John out on Friday. Does that sound good? If John goes out there, he's probably selling the job. If they take you back into their home after you've already given them an estimate, you're probably getting that sale. So
yeah,
make
Rehash
sure you,
was so big for us. I mean, at the Basement Doctor, I know we talk about it, but we actually put a concerted effort into that, knowing that these individuals reached out to your company. You went out, you provided them with an estimate, you felt confident about it. You came back, and you didn't hear anything. And so, like you were saying, it could just be urgency, or maybe they didn't like the person that you sent out. We did actually have that a couple times. It might have been the fact that, like, they didn't have the money or the economic conditions, or, we weren't too sure if we were going to be going on a trip. Homeowners have 11 billion different reasons.
Mhm.
Now, the great thing about Rehash is that you have the opportunity, because they gave you their information, you provided
Mhm.
them an estimate, you can reach back out to them unless they say, hey, don't contact me anymore. So at that point, you mark them off. Hey, they're no longer part of this bucket for you. But,
Mhm.
and I guess if they say, hey, I went with another company, all right, they're not 100%, out of the equation. Maybe you provide some services that, that other company that they went with doesn't provide, and you can help them in the future. But what you and I have talked about, this is such an amazing opportunity. You already paid to get the opportunity. You provide a proposal, you know exactly what it is. And this is where there's that evolution. So first you've got that customer service rep that, hey, that they can talk to homeowners really well, and they can ask them questions. They can, take these cues, and they can have these different assets and resources that then they can give a special offer, or, get someone else back out and get it back on the schedule.
Mhm.
And they're getting a reward. And then, that graduates into, hey, okay, we're seeing this program works. Let's actually hire an internal sales representative. But the
Yes.
craziest thing, and listeners, I'm hoping you take this to heart. I can tell you that there are networks and systems out there, other companies that you're competing against, that do not do Rehash. Literally, these guys just churn and burn. They're running the lead. If they don't close it in the home, it's gone. They're not calling behind it. They're not doing anything. So
Mhm.
put this in your wheelhouse. We ourselves at the agency are putting together some crazy programs, one of which we're obviously, rolling out right now. But oh my gosh, please, Rehash. It's your opportunity to turn what you already paid for into something on your bottom line.
Yep. So much opportunity there, guys.
Yes.
Can't say it enough. Run quarterly re-engagement campaigns for older leads and past customers. Just do it. And then the last thing in this list for me is accountability. So, on the podcast, we talk about it all the time, but weekly KPIs, scoreboards for marketing, for your call center, and for your sales team. If you want to learn more about what that looks like, go back to the previous episodes and hear the more in the weeds conversation about these KPIs, why you should measure them, how you should measure them, and go from there. And then
And
everyone should see how their part of the machine is performing. So those weekly snapshots, you need to have a person who's accountable for each of those, right? And to harken back to the episode with Ed, make sure that this isn't being used just as accountability, but also as coaching, right? Like you guys are observing an opportunity to improve something in the system. If you have somebody who is under their target, it should not just be a announcement in front of the company that this person is under their target or something like that. Like, don't make this a scare tactic type of thing. Make this a team effort, coaching, improvement overall type of environment where let's all talk about how we can deploy resources or focus education or like in order to hit these targets. What needs to be done needs to be the conversation.
oh, that's perfect. No, I appreciate it, Anthony. I mean, that's obviously so much, and we understand it's so much to take in. That's why we've put this resource together. On the website. The interactive KPI calculator. We've got all of these podcasts that we've been putting together, talking about attribution, talking about AI, talking about your KPIs through your marketing, and advertising, your call center, into your sales. So just do yourself and do your company a favor and use these free resources, because
Hmm.
it's not that this is just pulled out of thin air. This is something that's being applied and consistently fine tuned,
Yes.
through data and just seeing different ways that we can improve efficiency. So with that, I'm going to take us into the pro tip of the week. I want to talk about the year not closing itself. So most homeowner or most business owners at this point kind of drift into the holidays and they essentially say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to take care of it in January." You just can't do that. And I know we've had individuals come to us and say, "Hey, well, we're talking here in October, we're talking in November, and we don't have the performance metrics, moving forward." Well, there's likely cyclical data. You've got performance KPIs. We've put some things into, the blogs that we put together that help you kind of look at this conditionally so that
Hmm.
you can see, approximately what your engine should be providing. But don't wait, because the reality is, and I've seen it time and time again, a smaller company, 1 million or so, they're not paying attention to this stuff. And if you want to make that jump to 3 and then to 5 and to 7 and to 10, what happens is you start paying attention to this and then you
Hmm.
start making these educated decisions based on the KPIs. And with that, anyone that is actually making a concerted effort into improving themselves during that Q4 to plan for the following year, they're actually going to have success starting in Q1. So then you have like this
Hmm.
whole full year and you're like, wow, this is fantastic. We're seeing incredible performance and, you can make any adjustments as well. So it's time to like really lock the machine in. We call it from the top down. So go back and look at how your performance has been in 2025. How many leads actually came in? How many of those became appointments? How many of those did you actually run? How many did you close? And then what was the average cost per lead? Because if you're looking at each of these performance KPIs, it gives you a really good indication of where you need to improve. And then also, what is your machine capable of? Because we honestly, as you're measuring on a monthly basis, you're going to begin to see, okay, we have some call answering capacity issues in the call center. So
Hmm.
we either implement an AI to take the overflow or the after hours, or I have to hire another CSR. And then you go into your booked appointments. All right, well, if it got booked and the person was excited and we did a great job qualifying it, why did they fall off? Well, they may have fallen off because we asked them to wait more than 2 weeks. If you're
Hmm.
asking someone that has urgency to wait longer than 2 weeks, they're going to drop off. So now, if your lead to appointment is consistent and you're seeing an appointment rate drop off, it's an indicator that you can hire another sales representative. And that's great because that means more revenue. So,
Exactly.
just looking at each of these, and I'm not going to go into each one in detail. We talk about it obviously in the blog, and we've talked about it in detail in our podcast. But it's really just understanding, how many of these are turning into, the sales, and then what does each of the sales cost to generate?
Right. Um, and get those answers, and you've already started to build your 2026 playbook, right? Actually, it's another. I had this conversation this morning moment where one of my clients. It's like I have a really good relationship with these guys, but they're kind of fly by the seat of their pants operations, insanely successful, right? But I feel like uh, it is one thing they can improve upon is how much formulation or like creating the plan or getting ahead of the ball instead of behind it. Um, uh, I asked, do we know what our targets are for 2026? And the answer was, I'm still just trying to close out 2025 as best as I can. And it's like, I hear you and I want you to do that because I'm still part of that mission too, right? But now we're looking at two different goals and we're not aligned in what the priority should be. In situations like that, you need to have a separation between whose responsibility it is to make sure that the operations close out like peak for the rest of the year, and somebody who can focus their attention on planning for 2026, because what you've created is an environment for Q1 being somewhat of a coin flip. Obviously, they have our support, so I'm going to develop a good strategy to help them in Q1 regardless, but it would be a lot more helpful if I already knew what their goals were going to be, right? So I'll kind of create my own target based on what I think is achievable for them, and that's what we'll walk forward with for our strategy to start in Q1. But if there is like a distance between what I had found to be reasonable and what they are shooting for, then and that doesn't come out until January or February, we're going to be behind already, most likely, right?
Oh yeah.
So
It's a lot easier to drive that car down a dark road with your headlights on. Mm.
exactly. Um, don't build 2026 on hope, build it on math. If you're concerned with the fact that you haven't closed out the year, use projections. You're not going to be that far off unless something crazy happens, right? So just use projections. Consider this year closed out at that number. Run your actual 2025 data through the KPI calculator on our website, and it's going to be linked in the show notes. See what it says. See what information you plot in for what your machine looks like, and come out of the other end with that output and say, let's come up with a strategy using this number. You don't have to commit to it. Start there, right? If the calculator shows that you need 1,500 leads to hit your goal, but you only generated 900 this year, you need your system to improve, right? So you either have to come to the table with a lot more dollars, right? Because you need that thing to go up by 50% or more, actually, right? So you're going to have to bring more money to that equation, or you need to look at what are the other levers and how can I influence them? If you are able to get a 5% improvement on your closing rate, for example, if you're able to set 5% more of the appointments for the leads that come in, you might not have to add more money to your marketing strategy. So see what that looks like. What is a reasonable target for improving the other variables that go into that equation? And then if it feels like you stretched it too far, then more dollars is eventually going to have to be part of that conversation as well. You can either increase your marketing investment, improve your conversion rates, or adjust your goal, but you can't ignore the math. Those are the three things.
Yeah, kind of hard to ignore the math. I mean, it's funny, as we look at all of this data and we analyze it. I'm so thankful, obviously these days, to have the access to these AI platforms, because I mean, when we were manually calculating all of this data and forecasting, and I mean, we were living in these huge detailed spreadsheets, and now having these abilities, I mean, layering the data. I mean, we were able to identify, the 3 regions that we were covering for the one client, when they would pull their, marketing and advertising from one area to give it to another, you could see how everything approached, or, leads and your sales and everything went just wonky based on this push and this pull effect. But layering it and then pulling it all back together showed holistically the performance was stout. It was just really, could we give more revenue into these other areas? But having access to that data and visualizing it just really makes it easy. For me, eye-opening, dangerous, I guess, if you will, because we're able to really come up with new ideas and ways to improve performance, specifically for our clients and for our listeners. So, listeners, if you found this episode to be helpful, pay attention to your numbers. Just understand that this is something that you're coming into the end of this year. It's probably the most exciting time of the year. I know you're thinking about the holidays, but recap, get with your strategist and start planning for 2026 so that you can have the best success possible for your business. We suggest that you go to greenbombstiers.com. You can have access to the free interactive KPI calculator. Under our marketing tips, we've got a whole bunch of different blogs. A lot of the topics that we've talked about in the episodes, obviously go back and listen to the previous episodes. Anthony and I have had some really amazing guests and have, dove deep on our own into these KPIs to just give you these granular details that can really help you move the needle for your company. So, we ask that you like, rate, subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and keep getting the edge that you need to grow your business. We'll see you next time.